Air India Flight 101 from New Delhi to New York battled bad weather and multiple systems failures on September 11th, 2018. At 30,000 feet, suddenly, lightning illuminates the sky and a chilling announcement comes over the intercom. The engines have failed. The cabin plunges into darkness, emergency lights flicker, and passengers are gripped with fear. This isn't a scene from a movie, it's a real-life nightmare. As the pilot struggled with the failing systems, a terrifying question hung in the air. Would the rest of the plane hold together, or was it on the verge of breaking apart at any moment? If you want to find out what happened, stay tuned. This is the true story of Air India Flight 101. Air India, the Indian flag carrier airline, began in 1932 when J.R.D. Tata, an Indian aviator and business tycoon, founded Tata Airlines. The airline's first flight was a small, single-engine plane called the de Havilland Puss Moth. This plane carried mail from Karachi to Bombay, which is now known as Mumbai, and then continued to Madras, now known as Chennai. After World War II, Tata Airlines became a public limited company and was renamed Air India. In 1960, Air India made history by introducing its first jet aircraft, the Boeing 707 named Gauri Shankar, becoming the first Asian airline to do so. Among Air India's many routes, there was one called Air India Flight 101, which faced its most terrible situation. The aircraft used in this flight was a Boeing 707-300ER. It's an upgraded version of the 777-300. By the way, the ER in the name stands for Extended Range, which means it can carry more fuel and has a higher maximum takeoff weight, allowing it to fly up to 7,370 nautical miles with 396 passengers in a two-class seating layout. This model has longer wingtips, a stronger body and wings, and a modified landing gear. The wings have an aspect ratio of 9:0. It's powered by the GE 9115B turbofan engine, which is the most powerful jet engine in the world, with a maximum thrust of 115,300 pounds force. This plane has played a big role in the success of the 777 series, beating competitors like the Airbus A340-600 and the A350-1000. With its two engines, it costs about 8 to 9% less to operate than the A340-600. Many airlines prefer this aircraft over the older 747-400, especially since it uses 20% less fuel. The first 777-300ER was delivered to Air France on April 29, 2004, and Air India added this plane to its fleet in 2007 as part of its modernization efforts. This plane, known for its long range and fuel efficiency, was a major improvement, allowing Air India to boost its long-haul flights. So this aircraft became key for Air India's international routes, especially to North America and Europe. But keeping the Boeing 777-300ER in good shape is crucial for safety and efficiency, and for this reason, Air India has strict maintenance routines with regular checks and overhauls. These include daily inspections, routine maintenance every few hundred flight hours, and thorough checks every few years. Despite all these efforts, it faced an incident with Air India Flight 101 that was unforgettable. Captain Rustam Palia and Captain Vikas Kathpalia were the pilots in charge of Air India Flight 101 on September 11, 2018. Captain Rustam Palia was a very experienced pilot with many years of flying. His deep understanding of the Boeing 777-300ER and his leadership skills made him someone everyone could rely on. On the other hand, First Officer Vikas Kathpalia was also a seasoned pilot with a lot of experience in commercial flying and had handled tough situations in the air successfully before. It was early morning on the 17th anniversary of the 9/11 incident, as many New Yorkers began their day like any other normal day. From waking up to having coffee, a Boeing 777-300ER was carrying 370 passengers and nearing John F. Kennedy International Airport. The plane was completing the last part of its 15-hour non-stop journey, flying over Pakistan, Afghanistan, Russia, Finland, Greenland, and Canada using the polar route. As the Boeing airplane approached JFK Airport, just about 14 miles away, Everything seemed normal on Air India 101's flight, but suddenly the cockpit was filled with alarming sounds and flashing lights of different colours. The pilots quickly realised that the plane was experiencing multiple system failures. Captain Rustom discovered that the Boeing's Instrument Landing System, ILS, had failed, just 3 to 4 minutes away from landing. ILS is crucial for guiding pilots during landings, especially when visibility is poor due to clouds or fog. It's locked onto it, and the glide slope, which helps the plane descend properly. As air traffic control at JFK cleared Air India 101 to use the localizer for landing, Captain Rustom and his crew found that the aircraft's systems couldn't lock onto the localizer signal. To add more chaos to this situation, the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, TCAS, which helps to prevent mid-air collisions, had also stopped working. With the cloud base around 200 feet, Captain Rustom and his crew couldn't rely on a non-precision approach, which doesn't use electronic glide path guidance. They couldn't use lateral navigation, LNAV, and vertical navigation, VNAV, which depend on GPS data, because they require a higher cloud base of 650, Cassaday 700 feet. During their approach, the crew also received false warnings about a problem with the landing gear, which thankfully turned out to be not true. As the flight continued its approach and stabilized, the crew decided to initiate a go-around at JFK Airport. Now, one more big problem came to the list. The plane started dealing with rapidly decreasing fuel levels. After flying non-stop from New Delhi, the plane had only about 7.3 tons of fuel left, which equates to about 1 hour of flying time. During the go-around maneuver, they used up an additional 2 tons of fuel. It's important to note that planes flying at lower altitudes consume more fuel than those at higher altitudes. Problems got them from all sides. The pilots kept in constant communication with JFK's air traffic control to get the latest weather updates and decide on nearby alternate airports for landing. Several options were suggested, but due to low fuel levels, they had to rule out airports with higher cloud bases. After such a long flight, they only had enough fuel to reach their main alternate, New York Stewart International Airport, with just half an hour of reserve fuel. Meanwhile, this flight was kept separate from other air traffic as the pilots urgently tackled the situation. As the pilots deliberated their next move, Captain Rustom considered using Arnav, which uses GPS to guide the aircraft during low visibility landings. However, due to low fuel and increasing fatigue after a 15-hour flight, they didn't have time to review the necessary charts. The pilots kept asking JFK's air traffic control for the latest weather updates. They were told that the cloud cover at New York Airport, about 32 miles from JFK, had improved to 400 feet from the previous 200 feet. Given the circumstances, the pilots decided to go for it. However, they still faced the challenge of aligning the heavy Boeing 777 precisely with the center of the runway at New York to avoid overshooting. Earlier, during Air India Flight 101's second approach to JFK, the pilots discovered that all 3 radar altimeters had stopped working. It's quite unusual for all 3 radar altimeters to fail at the same time. Radar altimeters measure the altitude above the ground directly below the aircraft by sending and receiving radio waves. These instruments are crucial when the aircraft is flying below 2,500 feet. What will happen? No one knows. They decided to use the LNAV and VNAV approach, which they hadn't practiced before. It is a do it in the right way or die type of risk. They took this decision because only the LNAV was functioning well in the aircraft. As the pilots had seen during their previous attempt to land, they were relieved when the VNAV system also locked onto the correct path. Once locked onto the VNAV path, they knew that they were at a safe altitude. The plane was about 3,000 feet above the ground. However, at around 1,000 feet during the approach to New York, the pilots lost the VNAV path. Things were moving quickly as they made a curved path of about 3 miles on our final approach. They were no longer on the right path and started climbing too high. So they switched to using vertical speed mode, increasing their descent rate from 800 feet per minute to 1,200 feet per minute. As they sped up their descent, their aircraft's speed increased. They had to slow it down because the plane was pitching downward. At this point, the captain chose to switch from autopilot to manual mode to control the descent speed and land safely. It was a smart move because when visibility is poor, you can't just abruptly adjust the plane's angle. You have to gently correct its path and reduce speed using the flaps. During the descent, the pilots observed that New York had an overcast cloud base at 400 feet and broken clouds at 200 feet, allowing some visibility through the clouds at 200 feet. While the clouds were clearing, it was still not completely clear. The aircraft's precision approach indicator, which displays 2 white lights and 2 red lights to indicate if the plane is on the correct path, showed all white lights, signaling that the plane was still too high. The pilots had to quickly adjust the aircraft's alignment as it descended with its nose down. While the radio altimeter wasn't working, the aircraft had auto callouts that announced the distance from the ground: 100 feet, 50 feet, 40 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet, until they landed. From the cockpit, which is about 2 stories high, they could see the runway, so they used their judgment and safely landed the plane. There was a very narrow window for landing. If it had rained just 20 minutes earlier, the outcome could have been different. Both pilots credited the successful landing of the large jetliner to their teamwork, with each pilot carefully watching the other's critical actions. The teamwork really boosted their confidence. If one made any mistake, it was quickly caught. If the weather had been clear, there would have been no issues because the engines were working perfectly. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What do you think was the most critical decision made by the pilots during this crisis? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for your watching, and we'll see you in the next one.